Hey, Anthony, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Richie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I feel like we've got three parts to your story that I want to cover today, kind of the past, the present, and the future. And really want to start at the beginning. Tell us about you and how you kind of got to this moment.
So I was diagnosed with autism when I was 4 years old. And during that time, so that was like around 1993, Richie. And that was really during a time period where nobody really knew what autism was. Nobody really knew a lot of the characteristics for it. There
Mm,
was no awareness for it, no resources, pathways, or guidance for families and individuals dealing with autism at that time. And also that was during the time of the ADD, ADHD era for a
yeah.
diagnosis. So,
Yeah.
so that my diagnosis being on the spectrum was very, very rare. So a year later, when I was 5 years old, a group of doctors and professionals told my parents that because I was on the autism spectrum, I would basically wouldn't achieve anything in my life. They told my family I would barely graduate from high school, never go to college, never be an athlete, and would likely end up in a group institution with others just like me for the rest of my life. Obviously, my parents did not listen to those doctors and experts.
Good.
They told me at the beginning, around the beginning of my freshman year of high school, about my diagnosis. So that kind of became my motivation to kind of want to
Mm.
go out and prove not only those doctors and experts wrong, but kind of go out and prove to everybody that, you know what, I can do this despite what you say about me. So I was very motivated. I had to work really hard at everything, whether it was sports, particularly basketball, and school, especially because I'm not going to sit here and admit that I was a straight A student because I wasn't. Like I really struggled in school. I was not a quick learner. Like I took things step by step, process by process. So I had to work really hard in the classroom, but along that way, I had an incredible support system. I had not just a great family support system, but I had incredible teachers. I had a school district that threw resources at me left and right to help me achieve to where I wanted to get to be. Um, so I graduated from Okemos High School in the Lansing area, which is in Lansing, Michigan. I graduated from Okemos in 2007, where I then went on to Grand Valley State University for 2 years on a full ride scholarship for basketball. After 2 years, things just didn't quite work out for me, so I decided to leave Grand Valley State to achieve my ultimate lifelong goal, which was to play for Coach Tom Izzo and the Michigan State Spartans.
Yeah.
So went to Michigan State, was there for 3 years. I was a walk-on for two, was on a full ride scholarship my senior year. Um, and not only did I get to graduate from Michigan State with a bachelor's degree in sociology, but during my time at Michigan State, I became the first known Division I college basketball player in NCAA history with an autism diagnosis. So it was definitely a long journey, a crazy one, if you will. But I'm very blessed to where I'm at today. But a lot of that is because of my village, and I tell families and individuals on the spectrum all the time, like it takes a village. It takes a village to help get you where you want to go in life, and I'm very grateful for that. Because without my village, like I don't think I would be sitting here talking to you today about the past, the present, and the
For
future.
sure. Yeah, that's so amazing. There are a couple things that you brought up in that synopsis that I want to highlight, right? And one is
Mhm.
you said that your parents didn't tell you about your diagnosis until you were a freshman in high school,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
That must have been a really tough moment, and decision for them, but also a tough moment for you as well. I mean, can you explain that time a little bit?
It was because, when I was in middle school, Richie, like I was in so let me kind of take a couple steps back a little bit. So I had a parapro with me or an aide
Yeah.
from kindergarten until I was in 5th grade. And then when I got to middle school, they moved the parapro away from me. And because I was in a resource room with other individuals just like me and other students with learning disabilities as well. And so so I kind of had an idea that okay, like
Mm.
I'm in this classroom with individuals with different learning disabilities, different diagnoses, even those with autism. So I kind of had an idea that I had a learning disability. I just didn't know what it was. And so the night my parents told me, I remember this like it was just yesterday. I was sitting in our family den just by myself. And anybody who knows me knows I'm a big avid Detroit sports fan. Like I love the Lions, I love the Red Wings, the Tigers, and the Pistons. So I was watching a Tigers game, and this is when the Tigers had like the worst season in baseball in a long time. Like they had like 112 losses or whatever it was. But I didn't care. I was in that den I called it my cave because like the older I got, that's where I went. That's where I ate dinner when I got older. It's where I watched TV. So it was kind of like my little getaway, if you will. So I'm watching the game, but then my dad called me into the living room, and I'm like, okay, what did I do? Like I
Yeah.
haven't done anything. I
Aw.
mowed the lawn today. Was he upset because my lines weren't straight? Like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah.
But so I get in there, I sit down, I go, what's going on? They go, well, my mom goes, well, we have something to tell you. I'm like, okay, go ahead. So they told me about my autism diagnosis. They told me about the meeting that took place when I was 5. And, for whatever reason, I think my parents kind of told me about my diagnosis because number one, I think they figured I was old enough and I was going into my freshman year of high school. And I think they were
Mhm.
trying to find that fire that will just like something that will just let a fire in me and just let me go. Like just see where it takes me.
Yeah.
And so they told me the story, the diagnosis. I remember just sitting there. My mom just kind of looked at me like, "Do you have any questions?" I'm like, "No, like I don't. This would explain why, I think of certain words that mean the same, but they mean the complete opposite. Or if somebody was joking with me, I would take it too seriously. Or if somebody was being serious, I couldn't tell if it's a joke or not. So this all makes sense now. So after we got done talking, I went back to the family den and I was sitting in the recliner, but then I put the recliner seat down and I put the TV on mute and I just sat there in silence for like 2 minutes. And I said to myself, okay, you know what you're diagnosed with. You know what you're not, you know what people said about you. So there's only one thing left to do. Let's go shut some people up and let's go prove the world wrong. So from that day forward, I had like this giant chip on my shoulder of okay, I've been told I couldn't do X, Y, and Z. I've been told that I'm not going to graduate. I've been told I'm not going to be a college athlete. And being a college athlete runs in my family's blood. My dad was a baseball player at Michigan State. My mom was a 3-sport All American at Adrian College. And my sister was a volleyball player for Michigan State as well. So, like, it runs in our family blood. So I was like, okay, like, go out and show all these people, like, you can do all these things despite being on the autism spectrum.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm thinking about this from the lens of a parent and like, wow, what a tough decision that must have been for them to hold on to that. And I feel like as parents, we very often make the decision that we think is right, but like we don't know the answer, and
Right. Right.
but for them to be able to tell you, for it to have the response that sounds like they were hoping for in you, sounds like it really had an impact on you to get that information. It explained a little bit about some of the questions you had in your mind, but then also kind of put you on this whole new track of I've got to prove I want to prove this and I want to prove that I can do all this.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Like, I'm a parent of 3 as well. I got
Okay.
2 sons and a daughter. So I definitely understand, those decisions of, okay, when do I want to tell my oldest about, certain things that people said about him? Or when do I want to tell, when do I really want to go that route of, okay, I need to make this decision with them. So as a parent, I completely understand it. And you want to make those choices based on if your kids are old enough to understand it. Cause I mean, I've had conversations with my own oldest son about me being on the spectrum. So like he understands a little bit more now about who I am. But that was a conversation like I wasn't gonna tell him when he was 5. Like it was a conversation like, you know, he happened just to Google me one day and then he found out, "Oh, okay, you
Yeah.
did all this stuff. You did all this motivational speaking for those years. What did you talk about?" And I'm like, I talked about my story. Well, what's your story? So I had to tell him. And then he's asking me these questions about what autism is. So, obviously I like to say my oldest son, he has put it this way. He's an old soul living in a 10-year-old body because just how he is mentally and just how like incredibly smart he is. Like he's like way beyond my years,
Yeah.
when I was that age. So, but like but I yeah, I've always applauded my parents for doing what they did
Yeah.
because they knew that eventually they were going to tell me eventually. But I think it was just a matter of okay, when do you do it? Like
Yeah.
middle school, I was still trying to find myself. I was still trying to learn all these things. And then high school, they felt like was the best time
High school.
because I was starting to try to not only did I figure myself out, but I definitely had a better understanding of who I was and what I struggled with.
Yeah. That's amazing. I'm curious about your playing career and some of those things that happen. So I got a couple of questions, right?
Yeah.
My first question is, I'm envisioning you as a young man, right? Being in middle school and high school and playing basketball, right? That's your sport, playing basketball. And, it's a small arena, a small kind of gymnasium. And then you get to you get to college and you're doing it there and it's a little bit bigger. And then you get to Michigan State and all of a sudden you're playing in front of thousands and thousands of people. Walk us through that and some of the challenges you faced because that's overwhelming environment for anybody. How did you handle that?
Well, luckily for me, like, my dad was athletic administrator at Michigan State for over 30 years. So I was around that environment as a kid, but I really struggled with it early on. Because the 4-year-old, 5-year-old me would go to football and basketball games, and it was too much of a sensory overload for
For
me at that
sure.
time. Just like the lights of the arena, the scoreboard, the buzzer, the crowd noise, like, it was way too much for me. So it was to a point where I would have my head in my mom's lap, just
Sure.
put my head down, cover my ears, everything. But then one day, like, I went to a game and then the horn went off and I put my hands on my ears, but then I slowly took them off. And so, like, the quieter the crowd got, like, the more I was used to it. So every game I went to, Michigan State event, whether it was volleyball, football, basketball, or hockey, like, my hands would be on my ears all the time, but then I would slowly take them off. And it's funny because I told Dr. Temple Grandin this story, and she was amazed how I was able to control the environment around me, just putting
Yeah.
my hands over my ears and then just opening up a little bit, opening that door of noise and then closing it. And then it got to a point, Richie, where I was so used to it, I was starting to just go to games, be like, oh, this isn't a big deal. And plus, as a 9, 10-year-old kid, when you're watching Michael Jordan play, when you're watching Allen Iverson play, who's my all-time favorite player. When you're watching Shaquille O'Neal play and you wanna be these guys, like, that's when I started to learn the game of basketball, started going to my driveway and pretend I was playing in tens of thousands of people and just, like, be like, MJ scoring," like,
Yeah,
making all
yeah,
the
yeah.
crowd noises and everything, like, so,
Like,
like,
here's
once I
Anthony
got
with the
used.
game-winning shot.
Exactly, exactly. Like, I legit would be in my driveway as a kid with my Michael Jordan jersey on, and my mom was like and my mom would come out and say, "Hey, Anthony, like, 5 more minutes, we gotta go inside for dinner." I'm like, "Mom, no, 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 it's not Anthony, it's Jordan,
Yeah,
all right?
yeah.
It's Jordan, okay? Michael Jordan." So, because again, like, I dreamed of being those guys and just like, you know, overcoming that, just that sensory, for arenas, and just because I just one little thing I did, I put my hands on my ears and taking them off just to hear the noise.
Sure.
And then when I started playing, like, I think the biggest difficulty I had as a player, it wasn't, honestly, like, I got hyped and excited with crowds. I really did, because that's how I made a lot of my friendships, whether it was in high school or in college, was, I would go over, stretch by our high school student section and just talk to them as I'm stretching, or I would go and just yuck it up with the visiting student section, talk trash, like, and just have some fun with it.
Yeah.
But the basketball piece, though, that was a bit of a struggle because there would be certain drills that I wouldn't understand, and
Ugh.
my coaches would take me off to the side and walk me through them. There would be different terminology and play calls that I would get easily confused on. But again, that's where my coaches would kind of take 2 minutes out of the drill just to say to me, hey, like, watch so and so who's a senior, like, watch him, watch what he does, and then you go in there and do what he does, but do it better. So at the same time, it's like, okay, I'm watching my spot, but I'm also being challenged of, hey, go do it better than a senior when you're only a sophomore on
Yeah.
the team. So, but luckily, again, the terminology piece was tough, but then the more and more I started to get involved with watching film and looking at the play sheets and looking at the play boards that our coaches did, like, it really helped me because as a learner, like, I'm a big visual learner. Like, I really am. Like, if you put something on the board, like, I can learn it easier that way than just like, somebody explaining it to me. Like, I need you to show me instead of just like saying, "Hey, go do this," when I could be doing the complete opposite, which is why my mom noticed something was off with me when I was around 3.
Mm.
Like, if you had told me to go to my closet and get a red shirt, I would come back with something completely
The
different.
wrong
I
thing.
would come back with, like, a plaid checkered shirt. It's red, but there's, like, other colors. Or if my mom had told me go clean up the toys in the toy room, I do the complete opposite and get more toys out.
Yeah.
So that's when my mom, that's when, she was like, ah, okay, something's off here. But then the older I got, like I realized, okay, like don't just give me a direction, like
Show
kind of
me.
write it out for me and show me what I need to do. And even today as a school administrator, like, with my principal and assistant principal, like there are times where they have me go, "Hey, like, I need you to go do this," but I'm like, "Well, can you kinda show me what I need to
What
do
does that
first
mean?
before," like, because I don't wanna screw it up or
Yeah.
anything, so and they're very accommodating with that, um so basically just having my coaches show me plays on the playboard and, like, have me watching what my teammates did in drills or in plays, like, it really helped me become a better basketball player in the long run.
It's so interesting because I'm thinking about that must have taken some communication with them, right? And
Mhm.
a lot of trust, really, for you to be able to share with them and have a collaborative approach to how can they help coach you in a way that works for you, which is different
Right.
than, every athlete is different, every coach is different, every system is different. So
Mhm.
how do it had not been for those coaches taking that time to say, great, Anthony, here's what we're looking for. Watch this person. Here's the model of it. Now go and do it. Or, you know, I, that just takes a different level of communication and trust, I think.
It really does because every coach that I've had, like I completely trust them with everything. Like I would run through a brick wall for all of them because of what they did for me. And then that's how, like, you develop your relationships with as a coach, when it comes to coach players. So, like, I coach my oldest son's basketball team. So, like, when it comes to developing relationships as a coach with your players, like, you have to understand, like, who they are, not just as a person, but kind of what their strengths and weaknesses are as a player. And if you invest your time with those players and work with them on their weaknesses, you're going to earn their trust.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, I was able to earn my coach's trust and their trust with me so quick was because they were willing to take those 2, 3 extra minutes during practice or after practice to help me learn, to help me become a better player. Or if I'm shooting free throws and my form is messed up, like they're going to walk over to my hoop and be like, "Hey, try doing this, follow through this way instead of, follow through all the way through instead of just like,
Yeah.
following." So they always called it like a dead goose. Like don't be a dead goose. Like hand in the cookie jar, hand in the cookie jar. So anytime, even to this day, like I'll go to the gym, work out, and then I'll go put up like 50 shots or something for fun. And I always keep telling myself, hand in the cookie jar,
Yeah.
hand in the cookie
Yeah.
jar. So, but again, like I'm just very blessed that I had, Hall of Fame coaches, all three, all of them are. My high school coach actually not long ago just got inducted into the National High School Hall of Fame, which I thought was really
That's
cool.
great.
And Coach Izzo is already a Hall of Famer, and then my coach at Grand Valley State, Rick Wesley, like he's a Hall of Fame coach as well. So for me to be blessed to work with Hall of Famers, like it really goes to show, like one, how lucky I was, but two, like I worked with coaches who really cared about their players.
Yeah. That's so great. I want to talk about before we move on from your playing career, I want to talk about arenas and how arenas can be supporting those with making sensory friendly rooms and those types of things and what your involvement has been in that. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about what you've done and also what arenas should continue to do?
So So let me kind of backtrack a little bit. So I first got into the sensory rooms because I had some connections with people who worked in sensory rooms. I knew some folks from Culture City who are huge when it comes to that. And I remember it was the Cleveland Cavaliers, Dan Gilbert, who's a Michigan State alum. They became one of the first NBA teams to open up a sensory
Hmm.
room in Quicken Loans Arena. And when I saw that, I was like, man, like, has anybody else at the college level even done that? And then I start seeing the NFL teams get into it. Then I start seeing NHL and baseball stadiums do it. I'm like, like Michigan State could be one of the first colleges to do it. And so, because I know, like, Culture City has worked with Michigan State, for sensory kits for arenas, but they didn't have that one room for them to, have a sensory room for individuals on the spectrum or individuals with sensory needs to have that, room to go to and just kind of be, kind of like de-escalate a little bit. And so around about I can't believe it. Like 5, 6 years ago, I reached out to the manager who runs the Breslin Student Event Center at Michigan State, our basketball arena. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, like, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm looking for. This is what the cost would be." And when he saw the cost, it was maybe a good 10, 15,000 to get a room done. He was blown away. He goes, "I thought this would be like $100,000 project." I said, "No, no, no. Like, it's not. If we did that, we would have to knock down a bunch of walls. Like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're looking for an extra space here in the Breslin Center." And then about 3 years later, in the spring of 2022, I went to San Francisco to work with the Golden State Warriors for their Autism Awareness Night because my old teammate, Draymond Green, he's with the Golden State Warriors, and he's really gotten into the advocacy world of autism because of me, and I'm, very grateful that he's doing that now. So, but the Warriors wanted to show me their sensory room. So we go to the arena, they show me the sensory room. Their sensory room was built in an old janitor's closet. And it was a big closet. I'm like, "Wait a minute, time out. You mean to tell me that you made this sensory room from a janitor's closet?" Like, "Yeah, like we just repainted it, we moved stuff out, we put furniture in here." And so I remember taking video and pictures and I sent it to the manager at the Breslin Center. I said, "This is a janitor's closet at
Yeah.
the Chase Center for with the Golden State Warriors. Let's find a space. Let's get this done." And not even a few months go by, I got a phone call from the folks at Breslin Center saying, "We have a space. Let's get this done. Like, who do we need to partner with?" So we partnered with Freddie the Pizza Man Foundation. Freddie's foundation, they do sensory rooms in schools and in other arenas around the state of Michigan. So his foundation is to raise money for sensory rooms. And so I immediately called Freddie and I said, "Hey, like, this is an opportunity for not only for us to put Michigan State on the map when it comes to the sensory room, but it's also a way for us to put the state of Michigan on the map as well." So Freddie was working with the Lions at the time and the Detroit Tigers with their sensory room. And I told Freddie, I said, none of our colleges have this. So let's do this. And so in the fall of 2023, we officially opened up the Spartan Family Sensory Room at the Breslin Center. It was one of the first sensory rooms of its kind in the Big Ten Conference, in any basketball or football stadium. And, I kind of made that challenge to well, at the time, all 13 teams of the Big Ten. Now there's 18. So I made a challenge to all 17 of them, like, "Hey, we've kind of set the blueprint. We've laid out the blueprint for you. Now I want you guys to follow suit." And so just seeing that come to fruition, like, if there was one thing I was gonna put a stamp on during my time at Michigan State, I wanted to be that. Because, when anybody thinks of that sensory room, they think of me, or they think of my family. They think of what Michigan State did for me, but what they currently do for
True.
individuals with learning disabilities and who are on the spectrum. And it's funny because, like, after the room was built, the phone calls and the messages I got from workers at Michigan State saying, "This isn't just a great room for my students, it's a great room for my colleagues," because they didn't have that room where they just get away for about 10 minutes and just, like, breathe and, like, just de-escalate from things. But having that room, like, they said just the amount of stress that is taken off of them because of that room, like, they said it's incredible. And so I'm very proud of that. And the cool thing is that room's gonna be there
I
forever.
was gonna
It's
be
gonna
there.
be there forever. And even if Michigan State does rebuild the Breslin Center one day, like, it's gonna be another room. So,
They'll plan it.
I
Yeah.
exactly. So, and I really gotta give the Golden State Warriors and their event management a big shout out, because had they not shown me their sensory room, I don't know what I don't know what I would have gone back to at Michigan State and been like, "Okay, we need to find a space, find a space." So, I'm very lucky that Golden State was able to show me their sensory room. And, they do it right over there. They really do. They got 2 sensory rooms over at the Chase Center. So they have one on the main concourse and then the upper concourse, which I was like, so that's good stuff. So, just seeing what all these different pro teams are doing when it comes to sensory awareness and autism awareness, like, it's such a cool thing to see. And the even cooler part is it's going to continue for a very, very long
Yeah,
time.
I mean, I think that's the thing that sticks out to me is that it's that was the beginning, right? That's one,
Yeah.
1 or 2 rooms in one arena, and now it's happening in a whole host of different locations. I think the big thing for me is, gosh, those sensory rooms they're really for anyone. You said it, right?
Yeah.
Anyone who's
Yeah.
feeling stressed, and the amount of the amount of time that we need to pause and take care of ourselves as humans, all humans, whether we're
Yeah.
on the autism spectrum or not, whether we're neurodivergent or not, like how many of us need to pause and take 5 minutes a day in a sensory friendly location that is just
Mhm.
quiet to help us regulate and get back to our normal state. And I think that's super important for all of us, whether it's at an arena, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, regardless of where it is, find that time, make that time. And so it's a huge achievement to be able to do that.
No, it is, and I agree with you on that because, as somebody who deals with 500 plus students every day and plus staff, you're called in so many different directions as an administrator. And, there are times where I have to tell my staff like, "Hey, I'll see you in 5 minutes. I'm turning my walkie-talkie off for 5 minutes. I'll be back online at 1:45." And so I will go in my office, shut my lights off, and just kinda like just
Sure.
do, like, breathing exercises, listen to music, and then once my alarm goes off after 5 minutes, it's like, "All right, back to work, let's go," because being able to kinda take those 5 minutes, even if it's 2 minutes, like, being able to take that little time for yourself, it really does help you in so many ways. It really helps you get your focus back on track.
So that's a perfect segue, Anthony. I want to talk about, we talked about a little bit about you growing up, a little bit about your successful playing career, a little bit about some of your achievements, but I want to also hear about what you've got going on now. You're a school administrator. You spend some time as a motivational speaker. You're a father and a family man. Like, tell us about you today.
So, you already mentioned it. So, right after college, I went right to the speaking circuit
Okay.
because after I graduated, I was kinda at a crossroads of what I wanted to do. There was a big part of me that wanted to be an athletic administrator like my father does,
Hmm.
'cause, I was able to be around some great teams, some great facilities, and great coaches, at Michigan State because of my father. But I wanted to be able to have those opportunities and moments with my own kids one day. But then, when I first did my first ever keynote speech at a gala in Detroit before I graduated, I remember just going home one night and saying to myself, all right, I think you found what your calling is. I think this is where you need to be.
Mm.
And so from there forward, I was hired by the nonprofit organization that hosted the gala before I graduated. And so they hired me to do motivational speaking on anti-bullying and autism. So I went all over the country. I went to Oregon, I went to California, New York, Kansas, Texas, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida. Like I'm just naming a few places here, but I'm pretty sure I've been to more than half the states in the 11 years that I spoke. Um, and then I did my own anti-bullying initiative with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, who I worked for 8 years, called the Relentless Tour. And in just those 8 years, the Relentless Tour, we visited over 450 schools and events
Wow.
around the country, and I spoke to over 600,000 individuals around the country as well. So the numbers I'm very proud of, but like more importantly, the impact that the presentation had, the phone calls, the emails, and the messages that I got from students and teachers, like that's why I really did it, was for those kind of impacts. Like because I had a lot of people that have said to me, "Well, you're just thinking about you based on your story." I'm like, I'm not really, because like if somebody can take my words and my guidance and advice to help them live a better life, like that's all that matters to me. Like because a lot of the schools that I did them for free.
Mm.
Like especially a lot of the inner city schools, because we had a promotion in Michigan where if your school was 40% or more free reduced lunch, then you're not paying me. Like
Yeah.
I'll see you at 9 o'clock. I'll be there for a couple hours and then, we'll stay in touch. So, because I was getting paid on the side, through Department of Civil Rights. So I was a full-time employee for them. So I had a salary through them. So I really didn't need,
Didn't need it.
to make the extra. I didn't need it. So because it was the message was more important than anything. And a lot of those schools ran with it, and some of them still use the same message that I gave to this day. But after a while, I remember my dad having this conversation with me when I first started. You get certain things in life can run its course for so long. And so I felt like, the Relentless Tour had so much success, but I also felt like it was time for a change for me as well. Um, so I never closed the door on being a school administrator or getting an education, because every administrator that I've met and developed relationships with through, being a motivational speaker, I always have those conversations of, hey, what do you have to do to be a school administrator? What do you have to do? Like, what's it like? And every principal or assistant principal or even dean of students I talked to said, it's great. I love being around the kids. The only difficult is the paperwork. So I understand now what they meant about all that paperwork. So I'm like, okay, they were right. The kids are awesome. Working with parents is fun here and there, but the paperwork stinks.
Paperwork.
Okay, they were right. But I never closed that door. And so, but when I was applying for different administrator positions, it was tough at first. Like I
Yeah.
think I don't know how many places I applied to. Because I only have a bachelor's of sociology. Like I don't have a degree. I don't have a master's in administration yet. So so when I applied to the school that I'm currently working at now in Detroit, my principal at the time, she saw my resume and she brought me in for an in-person interview. And I remember like she was walking me around the building and she took me up to where the dean's office would be. She goes, "Well, this is your office." I was like, "Wait, time out. You said this is my office? Like, you're giving me the job?" She's like, "Yes, I am." I'm like, "Oh my God." So I was so excited. But then she told me, I asked her, I said, "Why did you pick me?"
Yeah.
She goes, "Well, if you technically think about it, 11 years in schools, you technically are already been in
You've
education.
been in
The only,
school. Yeah.
the only differences are you've never worked in a classroom. You've never worked, you never worked as a teacher, but because you have worked with students for so long and because of the motivator you've been, like, that's what we're looking for." And so I remember my first year as administrator, it was interesting because I was trying to get my feet wet, trying to, get to know our staff in the building, get to know our students. And then this second year I went through, it was much more smoother because
Sure.
I know our staff really well. I got to know our kids even better this year. So going into year 3, which is crazy, I go back to work in a couple weeks. Like having summers off is fun, and my fiance gets really jealous of me because she works, 5 days a week, and I'm like off 2.5 months of the summer. So I said to her the other day, I said, "Man, like summer just flies. Like I go back to work in like 13 days or so." And she goes, "Oh,
I
man, the
never
rest of us
stopped
have to
work.
work." And we
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it
But
definitely has its positives. And I'm very blessed. And like I said, like I'm a year away from getting my master's in higher education administration from the University of Alabama. So that's another thing that I'm able to cross off a year from now is to show people like, yeah, I didn't just get my bachelor's, but I got my master's too. And I did all this despite being on the spectrum.
congratulations on that. That's a lot of work.
Thank
I
you.
know how much time and energy you're putting into that.
Mhm.
But the theme I'm hearing from you, what you're talking about is, you mentioned your coaches would pull you aside and break down the drills a little bit and give you some visuals to kind of follow. It sounds like that's what you did your first year as an administrator. And then your second year was a lot easier because you had kind of that mental map, so to speak, of what to do and how to do it. Would you agree with that?
100%. And my first year, I had to lean on to so many different people. I had to really lean on to our principal. I really had to lean on to our assistant principal because they've been doing it longer than me. And the relationships I've been able to develop with, all of our teachers, just getting to know them and them getting to know me and being able to develop those relationships and asking, "Hey, if you were in my shoes, what would you do?" Or, "Hey,
Uh,
this is what I'm thinking I'm gonna do," like with a school initiative wise, like, what do you guys think? How could it be better? Or if we're doing like a field day with our kids, I'm always making sure I get feedback. Okay, what's the feedback? What didn't you like? What did you like? Like, and also like there's also like the drama piece too, where you're gonna have folks in the building that are not gonna be happy. You're gonna have parents that obviously want to blame you for everything, just like if you were a coach, they want to blame you for everything.
yeah.
But I do everything I can to make sure because my job as the dean of culture in our building is to make sure our culture is super upbeat and positive. And if it's not, like I'm not doing my job. But I also realize too, it's not just on me to make sure our school environment and culture is on me, it's on everybody.
Yeah.
Because we're around those students every day. We want to make sure our students are feel loved and supported because we are an inner city school and a lot of our kids come from different backgrounds, tough backgrounds. And we always want to make sure, like, whenever they walk into our building, like it's a sanctuary. Like they want to come here, feel at peace with
It's a safe
everything.
space.
Um, yep, exactly. So, and everything I did on the Relentless tour from a motivational standpoint, like I've taken a lot of that and brought it over with me. Like a lot of the stories that I was able to have and develop during my time as a speaker, I've taken those stories and I've shared them all with my students. They know a little bit about my background. They know about, what I've had to overcome. And I think for my students to be able to see that, I think it really does motivate them a lot.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, Richie, is because a lot of my colleagues, outside of education have asked me, even my friends, like, have asked me, who are your favorite students? The ones that are not in trouble? And my answer has always been no. Like my favorite students are the troublemakers.
Yeah.
Like I kid you not, because I learn more from them than I hope they do from me.
And
Because just being like I interact with them the most all the time, but being able to develop those relationships with the students and gaining their trust, that's probably what makes my job so great, is developing those relationships with the kids. And then, I've had a couple students leave the last couple years to go to high school, but then they come back and they'll come right to my office to say hi to me.
so you
Like
come
that's
back to check
that's the
in.
highlight. Those are highlights for me. Like just being able to have those students come back and say hi to me when I've always joked with them, oh, you're gonna forget about me. Like don't forget about poor old Mr. Ianni when you're like making it big time run at
Yeah,
whatever you do. And the response has always been, Mr. Ianni, I'm always gonna come back and mess with you no matter
for
what. And I'm
sure.
like, yeah, it's true. You probably will.
Yeah. But that's I mean, that I think that's a special relationship that's unique, right? That's not something that everyone has with their school administrators.
Right.
I wanna make sure that we talk about what's coming next for you, right? I wanna make sure we talk about the
Yeah.
future. You mentioned some of what's coming, right? You're about a year away from finishing your master's program. What else is coming for you, Anthony?
So, so my co-author and I were in the process of, you know, getting getting our second book done, as well as trying to get our illustration book done as well. So I'm also an author as well. My book titled Centered Autism, Basketball, and One Athlete's Dream came out 4 years ago. It'll be 4 years ago this September. And I've always kind of like always wanted to keep that going with my co-author Rob Keese. And so, there's a couple more things that I would like to do, book wise. And plus, as far as the illustration book goes, my mom's always wanted me to do that for so long. And so, once I was given the opportunity to do that, I was like, all right, I'm only doing this because of my mom. Like, this is what my mom would love to see.
You
So,
gotta keep mom
um,
happy.
exactly, exactly. So, but other than taking care of my kids, my family, and continue to work, I just plan on living life for the next, 100 years and just
Great.
enjoying it. But more importantly, doing whatever I can to, continue to help my community, which is the autism community, advocate for it. Cause, even though I'm not on the road as much as I used to, and honestly, Richie, like I tell people all the time, like I don't miss it. I thought I would miss it, but because I'm in a different part of my life, in a different career, like I really don't miss the travel. I don't miss going to all these
It's hard.
different schools. Like, yeah, like I did at most anywhere up to 4 presentations a day. And after a while, that like there was even one day I did 9 in a day, which was ridiculous.
Nuts.
And I look back on that and I'm like, how did I have all that energy to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, go to like 5 different schools, but still be able to do 9 different presentations in one day?
It's a lot.
Like, and that's the thing. Like everybody thought that, oh, that's the good life. Well, yes and no. The yes part, because I got to meet some incredible people, got to meet some incredible students, um, got to work with incredible businesses, sports teams, got to go to different towns I've never been to all my life. But the traveling and the going on stage performing got tired after a
For
while.
sure.
And so, I'll always have the memories to look back on, but I'm so focused on now with what I'm doing as an administrator. Like, you know, I mean, I'll take a speaking gig here and there,
Yeah, but
if
you
it's in the
can't
summertime,
but being
man,
on the
but
road
not
like
not
that is tough, and family and
Yep.
all those things. Anthony, I gotta ask you one last question.
Sure.
Um, I'm thinking about our listeners and and your experience and all the different roles you've played so far in your lifetime, what's one thing that you would want our listeners to know about autism?
Ooh, man. One thing I want our listeners to know about autism. You know, when it comes to autism, I want our listeners to know that, I've always told people in the past that autism does not define who you are, like you define who you are. And autism is just autism is an incredible part of my life. And I want our listeners to know that if you are on the spectrum, if you have family members who are on the spectrum, to remember that they are incredible as well. And what's so great about the spectrum, Richie, is that, you know, it's a big spectrum, high end, low end, you can be right in the middle. But I've also told parents and individuals like, look, like the spectrum, it's massive, but you know what? We all have one thing in common, and that's we're all unique. We're all
Yeah.
unique in our own ways. And some people have said, I've gotten a bit of pushback on this when I've said, when we're all unique and we're all talented in our own ways, being on the spectrum. I've met parents who have said, "Well, my child is very low functioning and they're never gonna be like you." But I've also shared with those parents about the story that Coach Izzo told me about how he has a next door neighbor whose son is on the autism spectrum. He's, has to have care for the rest of his life because he's very low functioning. But Coach Izzo was blown away by the fact that this young man has artwork hanging in the East Lansing Art Museum almost every year because of how great of a painter he is. And I remember telling Coach Izzo, I said, that's the thing. Like when people look at autism, they think of certain characteristics. They only think of one type of autism. And autism is more than that. Autism, the autism shows who we are as individuals. It shows what we can overcome. And not just that, but it builds it builds stronger relationships. It builds unity. If there's one thing that I have learned being around my family and every other family around the country who has individuals on the autism spectrum, is just how much stronger they become as families and how united they are on that front because they all have one goal and focus, and that's to support their son or daughter. So if there's one thing I want our listeners to know about autism is how strong it makes individuals and how unite families can be from this.
Yeah. That's a great message, Anthony. Thank you so much for that and for giving us the whole rundown today. Appreciated the conversation.
No, thank you, Richie. I appreciate you.
We'll have to have you back when you graduate.
Absolutely. I'm ready for that.